The legend awakens. The ruins stretched for miles, broken towers standing like giant bones in the desert. The sky above was dark, filled with swirling red clouds. It was a place of death, a graveyard of an ancient empire lost to time. General Xaltor of the Varkal Dominion stepped forward, his heavy boots crunching on the cracked stone. His soldiers followed, their reptilian faces filled with awe and fear. They were the first to step foot in this place in over 10,000 years. At the center of the ruins, something hovered in the air, a massive spear, glowing with a golden light. It floated above a circular platform, surrounded by alien symbols carved into the stone. The weapon pulsed with energy, like a heart still beating after death. "This is it," General Xaltor whispered, his deep voice filled with hunger. The sacred spear of the ancients. The prophecy. The legend spoke of a weapon of incredible power, created by the greatest warriors of the lost empire. It was said that whoever claimed the spear would become invincible. Kings, warlords, and conquerors had searched for it for centuries, but none had ever found it. Until now. One of the Varkal scientists, a thin, gray-skinned alien named Drakvar, stepped forward, scanning the spear with his device. His large, black eyes widened in shock. "This energy, it is beyond anything we have seen," he said, his voice shaking. "The power inside this weapon is enough to destroy entire fleets." General Xaltor's lips curled into a smile. With this weapon, he could rule not just his empire but the entire galaxy. No enemy would stand against him. "I will claim it," he declared. His soldiers stepped back as the general reached out, his armored claws stretching toward the glowing weapon. The moment his fingers touched the golden light, pain, a blinding energy surged through his body, burning him from the inside. He let out a roar of agony and was thrown backward, crashing against the stone wall. His armor smoked, his hands trembling. What happened?" he gasped, trying to stand. Drakvar's voice was filled with confusion. "It rejected you." The soldiers murmured among themselves. The most powerful warrior of their empire rejected. Impossible. Xaltor's eyes burned with fury. It must be broken, or perhaps it requires a ritual. But then, one of the soldiers, a young officer, pointed to the carvings on the stone. His voice trembled as he read the ancient words aloud. "Only the one of pure defiance shall wield the spear." Xaltor frowned. "What does that mean?" Drakvar's fingers danced over his translator device, analyzing the old language. His eyes widened again. "This phrase, it does not mean strength. It does not mean bloodline. It means something else." He hesitated before looking up at the general. "It means a being that refuses to kneel. A being that fights, even when all hope is lost." Silence filled the air. The Varkal were strong, but they followed orders without question. They conquered, but they obeyed their warlords. They were not a species of defiance. Xaltor's claws tightened into fists. He knew what this meant. The weapon was not meant for him. It was meant for another species. The human factor. The general turned to Drakvar. "Has any species in the galaxy matched this description?" Drakvar hesitated. "There is one." Xaltor's eyes narrowed. He already knew the answer. Humans. The word left a bitter taste in his mouth. Humans were a young species, barely stepping into the stars. But their history was filled with impossible victories. They had fought wars they should have lost. They had survived disasters that should have wiped them out. They had faced stronger enemies and refused to bow. The aliens feared them not because of their weapons or their numbers, but because of their spirit. And now, it seemed, the ancients had feared them too. Xaltor's mind raced. If a human could claim the spear, then the Varkal Empire was in danger. They needed to act fast. "We must find a human," he said, "and test them." Drakvar blinked. "You mean, bring one here?" "No," Xaltor growled. "I mean we take one prisoner and force them to claim the spear. If they succeed, We kill them and take the weapon for ourselves. A wicked grin spread across his face. The humans would never know what was coming. Deep in the ruins, the spear pulsed again, as if it had heard their plan. The ancient symbols glowed brighter. It was waiting for the true wielder to arrive. The human test subject. The spaceship's cold gray interior smelled like metal and oil. Sergeant Daniel Carter sat on the hard floor, his wrists locked in energy cuffs that glowed a dull red. His head throbbed. His body ached. He had been dragged from his station on Europa, blindfolded, and thrown into this alien prison. The last thing he remembered was fighting off a pirate attack near Saturn. Then, darkness. Now he was here. Wherever here was. A deep, guttural voice snapped him out of his thoughts. Human. Carter looked up. A towering alien stood before him. Its scales were dark green, its eyes like burning coals. Behind it, more aliens watched, their faces unreadable. Their armor gleamed under the ship's dim lights. He had seen their kind before, the Varkal. Warlords, conquerors, slavers. They ruled half the galaxy with fear and brutality, and they hated humans. Carter stretched his sore shoulders and smirked. Did I miss an invitation? Because this party sucks. The Varkal general stepped forward, his reptilian face twisting in annoyance. You will speak only when commanded. Carter shrugged. Yeah, I don't really take orders from oversized lizards. The room fell silent. A few of the alien soldiers shifted uncomfortably. The humans' defiance was unnatural to them. Most species obeyed the Varkal without question. But humans were different. General Xaltor exhaled slowly. He had expected this. The human mind was stubborn. Perhaps that was why the spear had chosen their kind. He turned to his scientist, Drakvar, who stood beside a large holoscreen displaying alien symbols. Begin, the general ordered. Drakvar pressed a button, and the cuffs around Carter's wrists tightened. A small shock of pain ran through his body. Not enough to harm, just enough to remind him who was in control. Carter gritted his teeth but didn't cry out. Drakvar stepped closer. You are here for a reason, human. We have discovered something. An ancient artifact of great power. It has chosen your kind. Carter raised an eyebrow. Chosen. I don't even get picked first for basketball. Drakvar ignored his joke and continued. We need to see if the artifact truly responds to your species. If it does, you will unlock it for us. Carter frowned. And if I say no? General Xaltor's lips curled into a cruel smile. Then you will die. Carter sighed. So that's how it was. The Varkal didn't take prisoners out of kindness. They weren't here to negotiate. He was a tool to them, something to be used and discarded. But that was their mistake. They thought he would break. They didn't know humans. The journey to the ruins. Hours later, Carter stood in the middle of a massive alien dropship. His wrists were still bound, but they had freed his legs. He looked around at the armed Varkal surrounding him. The ship rattled as it descended toward a desolate planet. Outside the thick windows, Carter saw a landscape of jagged mountains and ancient ruins. Black storms raged across the sky, flashing with purple lightning. One of the soldiers smirked at him. First time seeing our holy land, human. Carter tilted his head. Didn't realize holy meant looks like hell. A few soldiers growled, but Xaltor simply watched him. The general wasn't interested in threats or insults. His mind was on the spear. The ship landed with a heavy thud. The doors opened, and Carter was dragged outside. The air was dry, filled with dust, and the scent of something ancient, like old stone and forgotten power. Ahead of him, the ruins stretched far into the distance, and at the center, floating above a massive circular platform, was the spear. Even from a distance, Carter felt it, a strange pull in his chest. It was calling to him. The test. Drakvar stood beside the spear, his devices glowing with unreadable symbols. He motioned to Carter. Step forward. Carter hesitated. Every instinct told him this was wrong. But he had no choice. Slowly, he walked toward the weapon. The closer he got, the more he felt something deep inside him stir. The Varkle watched in silence. This was the moment. If the human was rejected like the others, they would dispose of him. But if the spear reacted, Carter stopped just inches from it. The air around the spear hummed. Tiny sparks of golden light crackled along its surface. "Touch it," Drakvar ordered. Carter exhaled. "Screw it." He reached out. The moment his fingers brushed the spear, a shockwave erupted. A pulse of golden energy blasted outward, knocking the Varkle to the ground. The sky above split apart, revealing swirling stars and visions of ancient battles. Carter gasped as images flooded his mind. A warrior clad in gold armor, standing against an endless army of shadows. A galaxy at war. A final stand. A prophecy. Then a voice. Not alien. Not human. Something older. "You have been chosen." Carter's body burned with light. The spear glowed brighter, its energy wrapping around him like fire. The Varkle watched in shock. No alien had ever survived touching it. But this human, he wasn't just surviving. He was awakening something. General Xaltor's eyes widened. For the first time in his life, he felt something he had never known. Fear. The Guardian awakens. The golden energy surged around Carter like a living fire. His fingers gripped the spear, but it felt weightless, like it was part of him. The ruins shook violently, as if the very planet recognized the return of something long lost. The Varkle soldiers staggered back, their weapons raised in panic. No one had ever survived touching the spear. No alien had ever been able to hold it. But here stood a human, glowing with the ancient power of a lost empire. Carter's breath came in short gasps. His vision was blurred with flashes of the past, memories that were not his own. He saw a great battle, thousands of warriors clashing under a burning sky. He saw a city falling, shadows consuming everything. And then he saw the spear, the last hope of a dying civilization. A deep mechanical voice boomed across the ruins. Unauthorized wielder detected. Security protocols activated. Carter's head snapped up. The voice wasn't coming from the spear. It was coming from beneath the ground. The ancient guardian. The platform beneath the spear trembled. Stone cracked. Then, with a deafening roar, a massive structure rose from the earth. A machine, a guardian, had awakened. Towering over the ruins, its metallic body gleamed with ancient symbols. It was shaped like a warrior, its arms ending in massive energy cannons. Its head was featureless, just a smooth black surface that pulsed with blue light. It had been waiting for the spear to be claimed. The Varkle scrambled back in fear. Even General Xaltor took a cautious step away. Drakvar, the scientist, gasped. "Impossible. This structure predates all recorded history. How is it still functional?" Carter tightened his grip on the spear. His instincts screamed that this thing wasn't friendly. The Guardian's head swiveled toward him. Designation: Sentinel of the Sacred Spear. Mission: protect the legacy of the ancients. Destroy all who threaten it. Its cannons charged with blue light. Carter had exactly 1 second to react. Run or fight. The Guardian fired. Carter threw himself to the side as a blast of energy vaporized the stone where he had been standing. The heat burned his skin, but he rolled and landed on his feet, gripping the spear. The Varkle soldiers opened fire, but their weapons did nothing. The Guardian's metallic body was reinforced with something far beyond their technology. "Fall back." Xaltor roared. His warriors hesitated but obeyed, retreating behind the crumbling ruins. Carter's heart pounded. This thing wanted him dead. But why? His eyes flickered to the spear. It had chosen him. Yet this Guardian clearly didn't agree. The machine's voice echoed through the ruins. "Human anomaly detected. Species unrecognized. Analyzing." Processing. Carter took slow steps backward, sweat dripping down his face. Wielder profile. Does not match the ancients. Error. Error. The Guardian hesitated. Something in its programming was conflicted. It had been expecting something else. And then, a realization struck Carter. This machine was old. It had been built for a time when humans didn't exist. In its mind, only one of the ancient race could wield the spear. And now, a human held it instead. To the Guardian, that meant one thing. Carter was an intruder. The fight for survival. Carter had no time to think. The Guardian's hesitation ended. It raised its cannons again. Carter moved. He didn't know how he knew what to do, but his body reacted on instinct. The spear pulled him forward, guiding his steps. He jumped higher than he should have been able to, flipping over a collapsing wall as the Guardian's blast obliterated it. The Varkal watched in stunned silence. They had seen humans fight before, but never like this. Carter landed hard, barely keeping his balance. The spear hummed in his hands like a living thing. He didn't understand its power, but he didn't need to. Right now, he just needed to stay alive. The Guardian charged forward, its massive arms slamming into the ground, shattering stone. Dust exploded into the air. Carter ran, dodging through the ruins, searching for cover. Hostile target detected. Eliminate. A blue energy blade extended from the Guardian's arm. The moment Carter saw it, he knew, if that thing hit him, he was dead. His mind raced. His heart pounded. There had to be a way to stop this thing. And then he remembered the visions. The Golden Warrior, the one who had held the spear before, had fought a Guardian just like this one. In the vision, the warrior had used the spear in a way Carter hadn't yet. Not just as a weapon, but as a command. Carter gritted his teeth. It was worth a shot. The command of the wielder. The Guardian lunged. Carter raised the spear and shouted, not with his voice, but with his will. Stand down. The moment the words left his mouth, the spear flashed with golden light. The Guardian froze. Its energy blade flickered. Its towering form trembled. The runes on its metal body shifted, glowing the same color as the spear. Command acknowledged. Carter stood there, breathing hard, barely believing what had just happened. The Guardian had stopped. It stood still, its blue energy fading into silence. The dust in the air settled. The ruins, once filled with chaos, were now eerily quiet. The Varkal warriors stared in disbelief. Drakvar's voice was barely a whisper. By the stars, he commands it. General Xaltor clenched his fists. His worst fear had just been realized. The spear had not just chosen a human. The spear had given him control. And that meant one thing. If the Varkal wanted its power, they would have to kill him. The War Council's fear. The ruins stood in eerie silence. Dust still swirled in the air from the Guardian's sudden halt, and golden energy from the spear crackled faintly around Carter's fingers. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. Neither did the Varkal. The massive Guardian, once an unstoppable war machine, stood motionless, its towering frame humming with subdued power. Its blue energy blade, once poised to end him, had retracted. And now it simply waited. For him. Carter could feel it. The Guardian recognized him now, not as an intruder, not as an enemy, but as something else. Something new. Something worthy. Drakvar, the Varkal scientist, was shaking. His four-fingered hands gripped his scanning device tightly as unreadable data flooded the screen. He swallowed hard. This is impossible. General Xaltor's reptilian eyes burned with something Carter had never seen in an alien warlord before. Fear. A dangerous silence. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the low hum of the Guardian's core, still glowing with the same golden energy as the spear. Carter exhaled slowly, his mind still racing. He had no idea how he had commanded the machine to stop. It had been instinct, like the spear had told him what to say. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't just a weapon. It was something more. And the Varkal knew it. Carter turned, gripping the spear. "All right," he said, breaking the silence. "So who wants to explain what the hell just happened?" Drakvar finally found his voice. "The Guardian obeyed you." Carter smirked. "Yeah, figured that part out. But why?" Drakvar hesitated. "Because it was designed to obey the rightful wielder of the spear." He took a deep breath. "The fact that it responds to you means you are now its master." A sharp growl came from Zaltor's throat. "That cannot be." His clawed hands curled into fists. This was not meant for a human. Carter shrugged. "Guess the spear disagrees." Zaltor's eyes darkened. His soldiers still stood frozen, waiting for orders. They had witnessed something they could not understand, something that shattered their beliefs. For generations, the Varkal had believed themselves superior, that they would be the ones to claim the spear's power. But now, an outsider had done what no Varkal ever could. A human. Zaltor took a slow step forward, his claws flexing. "Give me the spear." Carter tightened his grip. His body still ached from the energy shock, but he forced himself to stand tall. "Yeah, that's not gonna happen," the general snarled. "You think you are safe because the Guardian obeys you, because the spear chose you." His voice turned cold. "We are the Varkal. We do not take defeat lightly." The plan to kill him. The Varkal warlord's mind raced. This human, Carter, was now the greatest threat to the Varkal dominion. The spear's power was beyond anything they had ever seen. If the humans learned how to use it fully, they could become unstoppable. And if there was one thing the Varkal could not allow, it was a rival species rising to challenge them. Carter had to die. Zaltor forced his expression into something neutral. "Very well, human," he said, his voice smooth and controlled. "It seems the spear has chosen you." He gestured toward his soldiers, signaling them to lower their weapons. "Let us return to the War Council. There we will discuss what this means." Carter narrowed his eyes. He wasn't stupid. He knew they were up to something. But he also knew he was outnumbered. He glanced at the Guardian. It remained still, but Carter could feel its dormant power. It wouldn't attack unless he commanded it. Right now, he didn't need a fight. He needed information. So, he nodded. "All right. Lead the way." The Varkal War Council. The journey back to the Varkal capital was tense. Carter was escorted into a massive warship surrounded by alien warriors. None of them spoke to him. None of them looked at him directly. But he could feel their unease. They had seen something they could not explain, and that terrified them. Hours later, Carter stood inside a vast, circular chamber deep within the Varkal homeworld. The walls were lined with holographic battle maps, displaying conquests across the galaxy. At the center of the room was a raised platform, where 7 alien warlords sat in massive stone thrones. These were the leaders of the Dominion, the most powerful Varkal in existence, and they were staring at him with pure hatred. Zaltor stood before them, his voice sharp and commanding. "This human has claimed the sacred spear. The Guardian has obeyed him." A murmur spread through the council. One of the warlords, an older Varkal with scarred scales and glowing red eyes, leaned forward. "This cannot be," he growled. "It is," Zaltor replied grimly. "We saw it with our own eyes." Another warlord, her face twisted with disgust, spat out, "Then he must be destroyed." Carter's lips curled into a smirk. "Well, that's not surprising." He crossed his arms. "Look, I get it. Big bad lizards don't like being told they're not special. But let's be real. Your own prophecy said this would happen. So maybe you should think before trying to kill me." The warlords bristled. But the eldest among them, the one with red eyes, did not look angry. He looked thoughtful. "The spear has power," he said slowly, "and this human now wields it. He locked eyes with Carter. That makes him dangerous. Carter snorted. I was dangerous before. Now I'm just annoying. The warlord's lips curled into a smirk. Perhaps. He turned to Xaltor. You brought him here. What do you suggest? Xaltor's expression darkened. We kill him. Quietly. We take the spear while he sleeps. Carter grinned. Yeah, I figured that was the plan. The warlords chuckled darkly. But the eldest one leaned forward. No, he said. Not yet. Xaltor stiffened. Elder Varkesh. We have spent centuries searching for this weapon. The old warlord continued. And now it has chosen a human. His reptilian eyes gleamed. That means one thing. Xaltor hesitated. What? Elder Varkesh's grin was wicked. The humans were always meant to rise. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Carter raised an eyebrow. Huh, didn't expect that. Xaltor's claws tightened into fists. His entire worldview was cracking apart. This wasn't over. It was just the beginning. The hidden message. Carter stood in the heart of the Varkal War Council, his grip tightening around the spear. The air was thick with tension. 7 alien warlords watched him from their thrones, their cold reptilian eyes filled with either hatred or unsettling curiosity. He had expected fear, expected anger. But what he hadn't expected was the Elder's words. The humans were always meant to rise. The sentence hung in the air like a blade waiting to drop. Even Xaltor, the most feared general of the Dominion, looked stunned. His claws flexed, his jaw tightening as he processed the words. Elder Varkesh, he hissed, you cannot mean that. The Elder's scared face remained unreadable. I mean exactly what I say. He turned his gaze back to Carter. For centuries, the spear lay silent. Countless warriors, warlords, and emperors have tried to claim it. But none could. Until now. Carter exhaled, shifting slightly. His body still ached from the energy pulse that had nearly knocked him unconscious earlier. But even through the exhaustion, he could feel something new, like the spear was whispering to him. He had no idea what it meant. But one thing was clear. The Varkal were terrified of what had just happened. And that gave Carter an edge. The Council's dilemma. The warlords whispered among themselves, voices sharp and urgent. Carter could tell they were divided. Some wanted to kill him immediately. Others, like Elder Varkesh, seemed to see something more in what had happened. Finally, another warlord, a tall, lean Varkal with jet-black scales, spoke up. His voice was smooth, but laced with malice. Elder, if the spear has chosen this creature, then perhaps it is broken. A few of the warlords nodded in agreement. Carter grinned. Yeah, because obviously the problem is with the ancient superweapon, and not your ego. The black-scaled warlord's eyes flashed with fury, but Varkesh chuckled. You are bold, human. That is good. He leaned forward. But now we must know why the spear has chosen you. Carter shrugged. Beats me. Maybe it just likes my style. Drakvar, the scientist, cleared his throat. There may be a way to find out. All eyes turned to him. He hesitated under the weight of their stares but continued. The spear's energy readings are complex, more advanced than anything in our records. But I believe it contains data, a message, possibly even memories from the ones who created it. Carter's stomach clenched. Memories. That word struck something deep in him. Ever since he touched the spear, his mind had been filled with visions, flashes of a past he didn't recognize. A warrior standing alone against an endless army. A golden city burning under a sky filled with fire. And a single final command. Find the key. It hadn't made sense at the time. But now, if Drakvar was right, maybe the spear wasn't just a weapon. Maybe it was a warning. Unlocking the spear. Carter sighed. All right. Say you're right. How do we get this message out? Drakvar hesitated. The spear's power is locked behind an ancient encryption. We would need to access the original core. Carter frowned. Which is? The scientist took a slow breath. The vault of the ancients. The room fell into stunned silence. Even Carter could tell this meant something big. Zaltor's claws twitched, his tail flicking with irritation. You mean to send him there? That place is. Varkesh cut him off. The only option. He turned back to Carter. The vault is where the last of the ancients stored their knowledge before they vanished. If the spear carries a message, it will be hidden there. Carter rubbed his temple. Okay, great. And let me guess, getting to this vault isn't exactly a walk in the park. Drakvar hesitated. The vault is not unguarded. Carter sighed. Of course it's not. Varkesh stood. We must move quickly. If the prophecy is true, then we are already running out of time. Carter narrowed his eyes. What prophecy? The elder's expression darkened. The one that speaks of the spear's return, and the war that will follow. The hidden truth. Hours later, Carter stood inside a transport ship, staring out at the stars as they prepared for the journey to the vault. The weight of everything settled on him. He had gone from being a soldier, a nobody, to the wielder of an ancient power that an entire empire wanted to control. And now, they were talking about prophecies, wars, and knowledge lost to time. The spear pulsed faintly in his hand. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a key. But a key to what? Drakvar approached him cautiously. I have studied the spear's energy signature. I believe the vault will respond to you alone. Carter exhaled. So I'm the one who has to open it. The scientist nodded. And possibly the only one who can survive doing so. Carter let out a bitter laugh. Great. Love that for me. Drakvar hesitated, then asked, Do you not wish to know the truth? Carter looked at him. I don't think it's about what I want anymore. He glanced down at the spear, the golden glow reflecting in his eyes. I think it's about what it wants. The ship rumbled as it left the Varkal homeworld behind, heading toward the most dangerous place in the galaxy. The vault of the ancients awaited, and Carter had no idea what he was about to unlock. The final battlefield. The ship hurtled through the void of space, its engines humming with steady power. Carter sat in the dimly lit cabin, staring at the golden spear resting across his lap. The weight of it was unnatural, not heavy, not light, but balanced, as if it was perfectly crafted to fit his grip. But it wasn't just a weapon. It was a key to something much bigger, and soon he was going to find out what. The Varkal warship carried only a small team. Carter, General Zaltor, Drakvar, and a handful of elite warriors. Their destination, the Vault of the Ancients, a place of mystery, untouched for thousands of years. A place that, according to legend, held the final secrets of the Lost Empire. Carter's stomach twisted with unease. He wasn't sure what scared him more, the fact that he had no idea what was inside the vault, or the fact that, deep down, something inside him already knew. Arrival at the vault. The ship dropped out of hyperspace, and the view outside the window stole Carter's breath. The vault was not a planet. It was a massive, floating structure, a city carved from black stone, orbiting a dead star. Huge spires stretched into the void, their surfaces covered in glowing runes. A golden barrier shimmered around it, flickering with energy as old as time itself. Carter let out a low whistle. That is some serious ancient tech. Drakvar nodded, his voice laced with awe. This place predates all recorded history. Even the Varkal do not know who built it. Zaltor crossed his arms, his reptilian gaze locked onto the vault. What we do know is that no one has ever come back from it. Carter shot him a grin. Well, that's encouraging. The ship's scanners beeped, and Drakvar frowned at the readings. The entrance appears to be sealed, but the spear's energy signature matches the vault's core. That means, Carter sighed, That means I have to open it. Zaltor sneered. Then stop talking and do it. Carter shook his head but pushed to his feet. As the ship landed on the ancient docking platform, he took a deep breath and stepped outside. The air was thin but breathable. The platform stretched out before him, leading to a colossal door covered in rooms that pulsed with faint golden light. It was waiting for him. The spear pulsed in his hands. Carter didn't hesitate. He strode forward, raised the weapon, and placed the tip against the ancient door. The vault came to life. The trials begin. The golden runes flared, and the door split apart, stone grinding as it slid open. A blinding light swallowed Carter, and in an instant, he was somewhere else. The cold platform beneath him was gone. He stood in the middle of an endless battlefield, stretching as far as the eye could see. Broken weapons and shattered armor littered the ground. The sky above was black with fire, and distant shadows moved along the horizon, their voices whispering in a language he didn't understand. Carter's pulse quickened. He turned, only to find that Zaltor and the others were gone. He was alone. The wielder must prove their worth. The voice boomed around him, ancient and heavy with the weight of 1,000 battles. Carter gritted his teeth. Great. Another test. The ground trembled. The shadows on the horizon moved faster. They weren't just figures. They were warriors, clad in blackened armor, their faces hidden beneath metal masks. Hundreds of them. And they were all charging straight for him. Carter tightened his grip on the spear. He had no armor, no backup, no idea what he was even fighting. But that didn't matter. The only way out of this was through. The Battle of the Dead. The first warrior lunged. Carter sidestepped, bringing the spear up in a swift arc. Golden energy erupted from the blade, slicing through his enemy's armor like paper. The figure collapsed into dust. The others hesitated, but only for a second. Then they attacked all at once. Carter moved on instinct. He didn't know how he was fighting like this, how his body knew where to move, when to strike. It was like the spear was guiding him, whispering the memories of 1,000 warriors into his mind. He ducked, dodged, parried. His spear clashed against metal, sending shockwaves of golden fire through his enemies. One by one, they fell. But they never stopped coming. His arms ached. His breath came in short, sharp gasps. He couldn't keep this up forever. Then the battlefield shifted. The warriors froze. The sky above split apart, and a figure emerged from the darkness. The enemy revealed. Carter's heart pounded. The figure was not like the others. It was taller, stronger, older. Its armor was gold, but tarnished with age. Its face was hidden behind a cracked mask, but Carter could feel the power radiating from it. The spear in his hand shook. The warrior raised its own weapon, a spear almost identical to Carter's, but its energy was dark. Carter exhaled. Of course. Gotta fight the final boss. The figure rushed forward. Carter barely had time to react before their weapons clashed. The force of the impact sent him skidding backward, his feet barely holding ground. Sparks flew as golden light met shadow. The two spears locked in a deadly struggle. And then, the warrior spoke. You are not ready. The voice was not alien, not robotic. It was human. Carter's eyes widened. His guard slipped for just a second, and the warrior's spear slammed into his chest. White-hot pain tore through him. The battlefield vanished. Carter hit the ground hard. When his vision cleared, he was back on the vault's platform. Zaltor and Drakkar stood over him, weapons drawn. The golden spear still pulsed in his hand, but something was different. Something had changed. The vault's door was fully open, and beyond it, deep inside the darkness, a throne sat at the center of the chamber. And on that throne, covered in dust and time, was the body of a warrior clad in golden armor. Carter's breath hitched. The spear had chosen him. But he wasn't the first. Humanity's rise. The throne of the ancients. Carter lay on the cold stone floor, gasping for breath. His chest burned where the Shadow Warrior's spear had struck him in the vision, but there was no wound, only a dull, aching pressure. The trial was over. But the real test was just beginning. Slowly, he pushed himself up, his vision still swimming. The vault's doors stood wide open now, revealing a massive chamber carved from black stone. Golden light pulsed along the walls, forming patterns of an ancient language Carter didn't understand. Yet somehow, he felt like he should. At the center of the chamber sat a throne. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Massive, ancient, and covered in golden veins of energy. Time had worn it down, but even now, it radiated power. And on that throne, a body rested, clad in golden armor, its helmet still in place. For a long moment, Carter simply stared. This warrior, whoever they had been, had sat here for thousands of years, waiting, guarding something. Trakvar whispered from behind him, "By the stars." His scanning device beeped wildly. This body, the armor, it is the same energy signature as the spear. Zaltor growled. That means nothing. It is dead. The power belongs to us now. Carter ignored them. He could feel something pulling him forward. The spear in his hand hummed in response, its golden light intensifying as he stepped toward the throne. His breath was shallow. His heart pounded. Because somehow, he knew what he was about to do. Reaching out, he placed his palm against the chest plate of the golden warrior. The world shattered. The final message. The vault's chamber dissolved into blinding white light. Carter was no longer standing, no longer breathing. He was floating in a vast, empty space. And then, a voice. "You have done well to make it this far." Carter turned. A figure stepped out of the void. A man, tall and powerful, his armor gleaming like molten gold. His face was human, but his eyes held the weight of eternity. "You are not the first, Wielder, and you will not be the last." Carter swallowed hard. "Who the hell are you?" The golden warrior studied him. "I was the last of the ancients, the final guardian of our legacy." Images flooded Carter's mind. A vast empire stretching across the galaxy. A civilization built on knowledge, honor, and war. The ancients had ruled for thousands of years, their warriors wielding the same sacred spears Carter now held. But then, the war. A war so devastating, so all-consuming, that it had erased their existence. Carter's chest tightened as he saw it unfold. The Shadow Legion, a race from beyond the known stars. They had come without warning, wielding weapons that devoured light itself. They had not fought for conquest. They had fought for annihilation. And the ancients, despite all their power, had fallen. The warrior's voice was steady. "We created the vault to preserve our knowledge, to find those who could continue what we started. But we did not expect." He hesitated. "Your kind." Carter's fists clenched. "You mean humans." The warrior nodded. "You are different. We fought for order, for control. But humans, you fight for something greater. For defiance, for the right to exist." Carter swallowed. He thought of Earth, of humanity's wars, its struggles, its resilience. They weren't the most powerful species, but they never stopped fighting. The warrior took another step forward. The Shadow Legion was never defeated, only delayed. They will return, and when they do, the galaxy will burn again. Carter's pulse spiked. "You're saying this war isn't over?" The warrior's face was grim. "No, it is only beginning." The choice, the vision shattered, and Carter gasped as he was pulled back into reality. He was back in the vault. Back in the chamber, the golden warrior still sat lifeless on the throne. But the spear in Carter's hand was now brighter than ever. He turned, locking eyes with Zaltor and Trakvar. "I know why the spear chose me," Carter said, his voice steady. "The war that wiped out the ancients is coming back." He took a step forward, and humanity is the only thing standing in its way. Zaltor bared his teeth. Then we should destroy you now. Carter smirked. You can try. Before Zaltor could react, the vault's walls shifted. The golden veins of energy along the stone exploded outward, forming a massive construct, a colossal starship buried within the vault itself. A ship designed for one purpose: war. Drakvar's eyes widened in horror. You activated it. Carter swung the spear over his shoulder. Damn right I did. He turned toward the massive control panel that had emerged from the floor. The last weapon of the ancients was his to command. Zaltor lunged. This belongs to the Varkal. Carter barely glanced at him. Not anymore. The ship roared to life as golden energy surged through its core. Carter stepped onto the control platform, feeling the weight of the past pressing down on him. Humanity had not been chosen by accident. They were the next phase, the last hope. And if the Shadow Legion was coming back, then Carter was going to be the first human in history to go to war with an entire empire. He grinned. Let's show them what humans can do.